Welcome back, everybody, to the Wall Street Coach podcast. My name is Kim Ankert, and I'm very, very excited today to have Kyle Williams on my podcast. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Glad to be on.
Kyle and I got to meet in person for the first time back in November at the Traders for Cause conference. And yet we've been circling each other's direction for, I don't know, 3-4 years since Steady Trade. That's when I first heard.
You're right. Yeah. It's been, that feels like less than, a year or two ago, but I guess, was it 4 really? Wow. Yeah. No, time flies by.
I think so. Wow. So we never met. So I'm glad today we're having this chance to meet again and talk about your trading journey, because it's really quite fascinating. And I feel it's different than most people. So I, of course, will read your formal bio here a little bit, that Kyle really found trading while he was a sophomore in college and quickly realized that's what he wanted to do for the rest of his life. Like most traders, he had a rocky start, but eventually found profitability and now has been trading for over 7 years. What do you think for you has been the most surprising about these 7 years?
Wow, that's a good question. Most surprising. I don't know if it's surprising, but if you could bundle up or package in, call it a 10-second feeling or emotion, if you could just slap me in the face in 10 seconds of everything, the highs, the lows, the work, the effort, the determination, and you just like threw it on my plate right when I found out that trading was a thing, I probably wouldn't have done it, wow. Just because it's so overwhelming as it is in the beginning.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it didn't, obviously, and it really, you can't. It's very hypothetical. It doesn't happen for anybody, right? But
right.
As my journey goes on, I wouldn't rather be doing anything else. So I'm always willing to continue pushing through whatever setbacks or struggles or just hard effort and work that is required. But I think that's over the 7 years is that it's really never over. And that's why you really have to love the game, because even if you're in 5, 10, 15, 20 years in, it doesn't mean you can just kind of go on autopilot and make your money every day. Like it's always a showing up as prepared as you were, year one, day one. So yeah, I think that's that's not necessarily surprising to me. Like I wouldn't think that wouldn't be the case, but I'm always reminded of that as the journey goes on, that it's always a lot, but that's why you have to love it. So
yeah. Do you feel that in your bio, you sort of fell in love instantly? It sounds like it. You said, I knew this is what I was meant to do. Do you think everybody notices that as quickly as you? Or do you think that was perhaps the indicator that you would love it 7 years on?
I would say it doesn't have to be true. And the only reason why I say that, because the only reason why I knew it worked, it was for me, it was that everything I had been looking for in what I thought should be a career path, like once I found trading, I was like, oh, this is it. It's taking off all the boxes. I was kind of soul searching for what I wanted to do. And once I found it, I just knew, because I had been searching for essentially a year. I was trying to find out through my freshman year of college, like what on earth am I going to switch my major to and do with my life? And so by the time I got to that point, I was like, oh, this is God. I'd taken, 3 or 4 personality tests. I'd watched every TED talk there was on finding a career, right? Even read like a book or two. So I kind of already had really nailed down when I found it. Yeah. But there's other things in life that I just stumbled upon, maybe not a passion, but a very strong interest in, like working out. When I was in high school, I played basketball a lot. Basketball was always a very strong interest for me, or a strong passion, but working out was never really. I kind of just did it because it was part of, if I wanted to run faster or jump higher or be stronger for basketball, it was all for that. But then once high school ended and my quote unquote basketball career was over, it just was high school. Once I got into college, I still found myself working out. And then I found myself actually caring about what I eat, and then caring about actually counting my macros, and then caring about actually gaining some muscle or increasing my lifts. And, and I'm not so, focused on that anymore. That was really like the first 2 or 3 years of college where that was a really main focus of mine. But to this day, like that that growth of passion for that kind of fitness or health aspect, I still do it more on autopilot because that's more easily done on autopilot per se. But that was not something I just immediately knew I was going to love and still do, or work out as routinely or as consistently as I do now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it can definitely be grown into something bigger than immediately knowing that's it for you, you know.
The emotions in that hypothetical, kind of metaphor you gave us, what would be the most challenging or horrifying emotions that would come in that kind of one fell swoop that you think back or even now still live with, that you're like, yeah, these I could do without?
Yeah. There's two kinds, and I usually feel this when it's either a multitude of losses, right? I'm like paper cut after paper cut after paper cut, or in the form of one big, huge loss, one big smack in the face, right? And I say that because when I think of the paper cuts, and this may be different, this is going to be different for everyone because everyone's personality is different when they show up at the market. But for me, I'm a kind of trader that definitely will get down on myself too quickly if I lose too many times in a row, right? I am, some traders really favor risk rewards. Some traders really favor win rate. I'm honest with myself and know that, like, if I'm not winning more than 50% of the time, I start to feel it. I start to notice it. I'm like, I really don't like, leaving my trading up to a coin flip. Now, granted, it's much more than a coin flip, right? But when I get to that percentage round, I'm like, this doesn't feel good, because it's just more susceptible that you take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 losses in a row. And I don't know, for me, once I hit that 5 to 6 range, I really start to feel, even if the losses are small, maybe I lose, a fraction of a percent of how much I'm willing to risk. But if it's like just a constant little reminder, like, nope, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, it definitely starts to weigh on me a bit. And there's been times where it's like that in a row, but it's also all full size losses. So I've taken 6 full size losses in a row, and the gravity of that kind of pullback or that weight then further affects me trying to move forward and try to pull out a winning trade kind of thing. So I think that's a big weight that definitely gets on me. The other weight, and I think this is obviously way worse than I think most traders can relate to, is when you take a huge loss. I'll never forget ILAG, for those who are probably familiar with it. Spiked from pretty much 4.5 to 5, and then immediately up to 12 within 2 or 3 halts, 3 or 4 halts, volatility halts. And I was in that, and it was one of those scenarios where I was like, if this goes any higher, like right, and it was right around 10 to 12, like right where it actually topping out. I was like, if this goes higher, like this will be my biggest, and most detrimental account blow up I've ever had. And I had never really actually had an account blow up. Like, wow. People, one of the best things I did as a trader in the beginning was that I had a really good risk management where I would never really lose over a certain amount. And in this case, when my first account was never over, I only traded 100 shares. And it was like, whether it was a $1 stock, $5 stock, it was 100 shares. So that really, with setting a trade plan, I really couldn't lose more than 50 to $100 if I was really, having a wide risk. And that literally kept my account alive. I never actually saw my first account go to zero. And it wasn't until I actually had more money to trade with that I let that kind of safety net let go. I didn't have a max stop in mind. It was just, I can survive any squeeze kind of mentality. And then I got hit with that, and I was like, oh crap, like, no, you can't. And so that's one of those things where it's like, I kind of dodged a bullet that day, but I've taken other losses very similar, where it's like, when you take that loss, it's like, you get a feeling beyond the money, and the more the sense of a confidence boost of like, can I continue doing this? And of course, you let the emotions come down, you reset, you realize what you did wrong, you analyze the trade, and you're like, you know what, I'm okay. Like, logically, I look at my account, like, okay, I only lost X% of my accounts today. We're okay. Right. But in the moment, it's like, whoa, I could ramble on this all, but it makes me think of my very first big loss, was where I lost, I was about 2.5, 3 years in. I had now grown my, 6K first account into now around 40,000. And I took about a 10% loss on that account within the first hour. I lost like 3K on one loss, and then I immediately started revenge trading, lost another grand. So I was down 4K within the first hour on this $40,000 account. And I remember just feeling that same like huge punch in the stomach. Can I still do this? This sucks. That I've never felt anything like this before. And what got me out of that was I reminded myself I get to lose $4,000, right? Like I lost $4,000 over 10 months when I first started trading. Like I took that 6K account and brought it down to 2K. Like I lost 4 grand over the 10-month period. And now 2.5 years later, I'm now being able to lose that in an hour and have it only be 10% of the money I have to trade with. Right. And so kind of pulling that bigger picture out is a constant reminder to myself that, like, obviously since then, all those losses I've taken, my risk management has got much more in check, much more tighter. But whenever I even do still take a big loss with that, even within my risk management, it's always a reminder for me to step out of the pit of, the depths of your emotions and take a step back, reflect, and really see where you're at logically. And that's always gotten me to get out of whatever, gut feeling that you're in with all your emotions. So
yeah. It's a great way that you described it, that in the moment there is this sort of like, physical sensation of a gut punch. And then there's a part of you that steps into another mindset of, I get to do this. And I'm just curious where that mindset shift comes from. Do you feel that you already applied this, having been a basketball player from sports? Where do you feel that mindset of feeling the feeling, but then moving your perspective around comes from?
I want to say it's definitely a bit of practice, but also a bit of maybe upbringing. Mm-hmm. For practice, I think it's because I had heard that and learned that before, probably like the actual, you get to do things. As I was kind of coming of age of an adult throughout college and trying to find out what I wanted to do, I came across a lot of, naturally a lot of self-help things, right? Practicing gratitude, practicing mindset, all these things that kind of just make your life better without ever really needing a direction, but just feeling grateful because you're alive, right? Simple as that. And so I definitely, practicing that definitely got me in the attitude of like, I get to do things, versus having to do things. And then I think the logical, the actual being able to have that shift quickly, though, from being maybe in the pits of your emotions to then immediately getting out of it, no matter how much maybe time goes by. I want to maybe give a lot of credit just to my parents and my upbringing. My parents are very two logical people. They're very, frontal lobe light people, type A type people. And when you put them two together, I definitely took both those traits of theirs and almost maybe doubled it for myself, because I've always been known in the family to be the most logical, the most type A kind of thing. And so that, just more, nature or nurture, than just growing up that way and being that. So
yeah. Did you have any trouble with enrolling them in this decision, even though you were in your sophomore year of college? How did they feel with you going into trading? Going into trading.
So my mom has always been supportive. I could have told her I want to be a garbage man, and she'd been like, yeah, you can do it. My dad, however, was the more stern, let's see how it goes. He never took trading away from me, but there was always this, it's not resentment, it was just this attitude or this disposition, right, that he had towards it. And of course, like when I tell him I'm learning to trade, not just trade, but trade low price penny stocks, let's face it, what they are, right?
Totally.
He wasn't against the idea that I could make money, but he definitely did not see it becoming something to what it ended up being, right? A career and a salary, let's call it, it's bigger than anything he's ever made in his life, right? Or the average American. So the first couple of years, it was like, he saw it as a hobby for me. Okay. He would tell his friends, oh, he's got this hobby of stock trading. Even though I was doing it for, almost 10 hours a day. Exactly. Pretty long hobby, but eventually the reality set in for them when this was 2019 now. And I had made roughly like $92,000 in 2019. And I'm going into my senior year, like 2020, spring 2020 is my last semester. Wow. And so I pretty much told them, like, as I closed out 2019 and realized like I just made, more than any entry level job is going to pay me. I was like, guys, I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm likely not going to use my degree. And at that point they were on board. At that point, my dad knew he had nothing. There's nothing he could say to stop me at that point.
Yeah.
Because he's logical. He's like, well, am I really going to have my son stop my son from making something like that right out of college, right? Or at
Yep.
least if I could replicate it and do it again next year. However, they did say, and this is the funniest I've ever seen my dad. My dad said, okay, well, great. You're not going to use your degree, but you're going to now pay us for the last, they were easy on me. They didn't see my full college, but they said, well, you're going to pay for the last, call it 2 years that you've just focused on trading and not, college. And I said, and I tried to totally call his bluff. And I said, well, okay, I'll drop out. And his eyes, I've never seen my dad's eyes just get so, he was like, whoa, like my son did not just say that to me. My mom was quicker than that. She goes, okay, well then you're going to owe us for all 4 years, all 5 years that it's. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll pay. So yeah, the last few semesters I ended up paying for, and I graduated. My final was during COVID. Like my final was online, May 2020, wow. And I graduated with a bachelor in finance. So.
Wow. So I'm really happy that you spoke to that and you said some of that description, because I think I want to just poke around there. You said, not using your degree. I'm kind of curious though, don't you feel you do in a way use your degree, all that you did learn? Tell us like just about what your degree in finance does. How does it serve you, if it does at all, as a trader?
Yeah, my opinion on this has definitely changed over time. I think at the beginning, I have two answers. Let's put it this way. So my first answer and only answer I had for the first few years out of college, or even during college, right? Yeah. Was because I was originally an engineering major. I was always good at math, and so maybe that helps a little bit, but trading's a lot of emotion more so than maybe numbers. And so I knew I didn't want to be an engineer. So I switched to finance, thinking because it's finance related, it's into trading. It's at least it's somewhat of an easier degree. I actually had to take less units to graduate than engineering.
Wow.
But what it really ended up being was corporate finance, like me being a CFO of a company, right? Or some kind of accountant, not necessarily accounting, but just it was more balance sheets, income statements. And yeah, that I can say there's a little bit of that helped me then understand how to read companies' financials. But even then, that doesn't really take a huge part in my own personal trading. And so my stance on it was like, no, it didn't really help me at all. After being out of college and more of an adult in the real world, let's call it like the business world, or just working with people and individuals, I definitely think college helped me in a sense that not necessarily in finance, but just doing things you may not want to do, right? Like you don't want to do the homework, you don't want to do that group project, you don't want to do that essay, but you're an adult, so you do it anyway. Like this is what you've committed to. You've committed to going to school and getting education. Like this is what's part of it, right? And so I definitely think that has helped for sure, and just being a responsible adult in in a 27-year-old's world. So yeah, not directly finance, but just being a human being. Let's call it that way.
For sure. What do you feel is one of the most overlooked components to finding consistency as a beginner? I'll ask about sophisticated traders too, because I think it can sometimes go by the wayside for them as well. But for the beginners, what do you think they overlook and don't put enough importance upon to secure on the road to having consistent results?
I think it's finding like if there's always that funny saying, like you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, right? And so if you're looking for consistency, you need to be doing something that is consistent. And what I mean by that is repetitive, repeatable, day in, day out. Where, and I've heard a lot of traders say this, where it's like profitable trading can almost be borderline boring, where you are now doing the same redundant thing over again, rinse, repeat, day in, day out. There's I think a lot of people maybe get sucked into trading because it's exciting. It's a little bit of an uncertainty. There's action. It's fun. And yes, there's that aspect, but those aspects typically attract, the gambler, right? And yes, trading is gambling. You're taking an estimated guess or bet, but I'm not in trading to watch green and red flashing lights and feel like I'm in awe or fear or upset. Like I'm not here to play the roller coaster game of emotions. I'm here to pick a spot where I think odds are in my favor and that happens over and over and over again, it's almost like I'm looking at the same, I don't know if you're a sports fan, like the same football play over again, or the
Yeah.
same basketball strategy over again, or play. Like I'm just doing it over and over and over again. And if I don't have it in front of me, then I likely don't take a trade that day.
Yeah.
I'm not perfect. I get the gambler's itch too. Sometimes I want to,
Sure.
test the trade out, see if it works. But that's not what gets me to profitability and consistency. And so I think as a beginner, trying to really put a lot of effort into finding what that is for you, whether again, it's a setup, it's a certain type of strategy, a certain type of process, doing that every single day. Those consistent practices are going to, add up to consistent results. So
May I ask you how long it took you at the start to find that for yourself, that strategy?
So I found the strategy probably about 10 months in,
Okay.
but I didn't get good at that strategy until a year to 14 months, right? Around maybe 9 to 10 months in, I actually found it, which was for me panic dip buying OTCs. I loved the smoothness of how OTCs traded, and especially when they panicked, 20, 30% in the morning, there'd always, not always, but there was like a 60 something percent chance that if I time them correctly and buy them when they're starting, the panic stops, they're going to bounce, 5, 10, 15%. And so once I realized that was something repeatable, something consistent, now it was up to me to then trade it consistently, right?
Yeah.
I knew it happened. Now I just need to place myself correctly how it happens, and then I can be there to reap the rewards. And so it wasn't until, this was February, March 2017. It wasn't until, June, July that I really didn't just break even on them, but really started to make consistently bigger gains than losses.
Yeah.
So, and then from there, I then learned my next setup. And then by, 18 to 20 months in, I had recouped all my losses and now became, break even over the P&L kind of curve, if you want to call it. So
were you in a conversation regularly with other traders? Or were you figuring this out based on your own screen time?
So that's the one thing that I definitely think it could have helped me, but I just was, I'm not an introvert per se, but I just was introverted in this period where, I was studying a lot of videos. I joined the Tykes Challenge is kind of how I got started. So watching a bunch of webinars, video lessons, YouTube's, podcasts. I've read like 30 plus trading books. So I was really consuming in the content that was in front of me.
Yep.
But in terms of then reaching out and talking to maybe other like-minded individuals, I wouldn't say I failed, like it didn't fail me, but I definitely didn't take advantage of that. I didn't really start talking regularly to anybody until I was up, 25, 30 grand in profits. Like I already had found my process and profitability.
Yeah.
And then I started talking to people, mainly because they reached out to me. They kind of started to see my, progress. I hadn't even thought about it,
Yep. Totally. All right. So for traders who are sophisticated and let's say the market changes, what do they need to keep an eye out about, maybe finding consistency in a new strategy or just consistency as they evolve over time? What would your advice to them be?
I think the process they have, because there's always a strategy they have, but there's obviously a process behind that I think works in all, I don't want to say markets, but just in life, right? There's an efficient way to get things done, and whether it's in sports or business or trading, right? And so I think whatever process they have, use that process to then go out and find the next consistent thing. And I realize I've kind of done that without even knowing it. Whereas I'm over 7.5 years in. And if I reflect on, call it year 3 or 4 into year 7, I probably added, 3 to 4 new ways of making new setups, let's call them.
Yeah.
And I didn't even really realize it, not because I wasn't actually tracking and studying them and getting better at them, but it just became a natural process. Like it was, and I always make, it's a funny analogy I use. I always say it's like learning a language, even though I only know one language, but it's like, I've always heard, the first language is going to be difficult, but then your brain, your called neurons, like really get in a line with having the third language be easier and the fourth. And I think that's the same way with setups where, now it's like you can give me a setup you could tell me these are the criteria you need to trade it to be profitable. It works this amount of time, and maybe I'm not so good at it, but I could probably be somewhat profitable at it
Yeah.
quicker than any of the setups combined because I've already got the process down of how it should go. And so I think taking that process and applying it to maybe it's a whole new market, right? Maybe it's options or Forex. Obviously there's going to still be a learning curve, but I think if you have that process down, you can take that a lot of ways beyond just what you already do, so.
Yep, for sure. I think the language is such a great example because it stretches you. And once you get one down, you can move into lots of different languages.
And I only say that because I still haven't got my first one down. English is all I got, so I'm lacking in that department.
So you got English down, which is saying more than a lot of people out there. So some people still, even though it's the only language they speak, don't do it so well, Kyle.
Yeah, right.
I think you're okay. I'm just kind of curious, when you did cross over the 7-figure mark, do you remember that specific moment?
I don't remember the specific trade. The one thing I do remember most about it was that it was about a week before my 25th birthday. Mm-hmm. Not that I was like trying to do it before I was 25. I just remember thinking like, wow, how cool. Like, right. Next week I'm turning 25 and I just made my first 7 figures. I definitely remember feeling really accomplished and proud about it. But I also had a sense of feeling at that point, when I got to that point, it was like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. Or like in my mind, I've been here before. Like I knew on the path I was going, like, this is where it's going to end up if I stay in line with where this process is going to lead me. So totally, there was this happiness and this feeling of achievement, but then there also was this, this is what was supposed to happen, doing what I was doing. So yeah.
Did you celebrate it? Treat yourself to something, either literally or just an experience?
Initially, no. I didn't do anything big and grand. It wasn't until I think almost maybe a whole year later that I bought myself a new car. Mm-hmm. I got a Tesla. I then took my parents to Italy, which didn't actually happen. Well, not my parents, my family, my aunt, my sister, my parents, and then my girlfriend at the time, or now currently still. And we didn't actually do that till this summer. We were supposed to do it like 2021, but it got pushed back multiple years. So that was a big thing. My grandfather's dream was to go on a private jet. So we did that. But those were the big things. So they didn't come. And I crossed 1 million, what was it? Right before my birthday. So January 2021 was it? So it wasn't a few months to almost years for some of these things later that I actually followed through on what I originally, intended to celebrate with or for. So
I loved your interview with Anthony Nito on Investors Underground. It's just a great conversation. And you just talk a little bit about how, there's a mindset shift at trading at this level for years that begins to happen. Talk more about that and how you manage that for yourself personally, just as a human being, not get caught up in hubris, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. For me, I think every day is a new day. And I, obviously literally if it is, but I really do. And this goes for both sides of how you look at it. Like I really, whenever I take a big loss, I usually am pretty good at coming the next day unaffected. But it's vice versa. It's also if I, maybe I have a new best year or a new best trade, I don't come in the next day feeling like I'm on top of the world. It's kind of like same business as usual. We're showing up, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And I think that shows up also in my daily life where, I could stop trading and just live off the interest of my money, for a long time. Maybe not retire. I don't feel like I could retire. That's we got too much years left to live. But it just, one, I want to be trading, but two, it's back to business. It doesn't matter if I'm up 5 million, 10 million, 50 million, if I want to be here and doing this, how much I make or how much I have made is irrelevant. So do you feel,
again, too, that goes back to like a question I asked you earlier, is that attributable to this? It feels as though you have a very stoic approach There's this sense of groundedness. And, to be honest, for someone to have that at such a young age, it's rare. So what do you attribute that to? Maybe it's still how you were raised, but is there a certain kind of teachings or things you lean into that keeps you grounded, keeps you kind of in your routine, regardless of the external factors?
And it's funny because I always have appreciated like stoicism, but I've never really studied it or like I'll try to align myself with it. I mean, I've always wanted to be stoic,
Yeah.
and I've always appreciated stoic people, but it's not like I've studied or looked more into it. I just kind of slowly became it by maybe just trying to idolize or be like people who I think represent that.
Yeah.
I for example, like I went to San Diego State University, which is where Kawhi Leonard came from. He's one of my favorite basketball players for that reason.
Yeah.
And people make fun of him and joke about him because he's like a robot. He'll make a game-winning shot and he'll just kind of just straight face it, like, like doesn't feel a thing. When in his, I mean, I'm sure in his brain he's actually feeling a lot, but he doesn't show it.
Sure.
And I'm not like that. I definitely have my fair share of emotions, but I don't know. I want to say it's a little bit of just characteristics. It's how I've been. It just doesn't change who I am as a person, right? Like, like there's always saying like money changes you. And if you have like money, you tell how someone changes if they totally become a new person. I think that's why. And I remember this when a lot of my, lifelong high school friends, told me this. They were like, yeah, you're the same dude.
Wow.
Before and after. And I'm like, yeah, like and maybe that's why that came from being raised. Like maybe my parents helped me just be who I am naturally, no matter who I have or what I have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've said,
because you brought your friends up, I'm curious, it sounds like, they gave you that great feedback that you were staying the same, but did you find any challenge around perhaps not just that inner circle of friends, but just around you with people showing up different or awkwardly or jealous, all of the different human emotions that sometimes happen when people are succeeding, especially traders?
I don't really recall any. I mean, I shout out to my friends. I have a really awesome group of friends.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been friends now. Well, almost all of us have been 10 plus years. It's really, really cool.
Wow.
I mean, maybe there is in the background. I haven't noticed much of it.
That's great.
Maybe because I give off who I already am, they don't feel awkward about it.
Yep.
Because it's also not like I'm throwing it in their face. I think the only reason why they know is because I'm public about it within the trading community.
Yes.
And then they have over time know that's what I do, so they follow along with it. Because it's not like I text them or call them or so when I see them in person, like, look how much I made this week, like from the, I don't throw it in their face like that. So I haven't, I mean, knock on wood, I've had a good experience with people around me and the success.
Beautiful.
So
It's beautiful. The concept of sharing the highs and the lows, were you somebody that didn't need to express it? Like, did you share with your girlfriend or any of your friends, just the days that were really awful and painful, the days that were just so incredible? Did you find that you didn't need to speak about it to others, or did you find you just had one or two that you could share regardless?
Yeah, the immediate or big ups or downs, I think by that point, I had trader buddies to talk to about it. I didn't really go to anyone in my personal life. Now, granted, me and my girlfriend, we've been dating over a year and a half now, almost coming up on 2 years. That is someone I've had to learn how to share it with because, we live together. So it's like, if I'm had a huge loss, like it's kind of hard not to have her see it, she can see it in my face or see it in my posture or whatever it is. So that has been an experience, like trying to not put it on her, because and I'm not trying to, but it's like, it's very easy to be like, if I'm just having a really crappy day, it's hard not to have that affect her. And so trying to communicate that if like I've had a bad day and why, and explain how it worked, or because she's not remotely, interested or understanding of the markets. So that's been something I share, but other than that, the trading community is I've made a lot of really cool people, a lot of cool friends that I we're able to share and experience together our ups and downs.
Yeah. How important do you feel that is? I think it's so critical to survive it. But, did you see a difference having that community at some point? Because you didn't have it, sounds like, for those first 2 years. Did you find it different in your coping of the highs and lows by having those you could be truly forthright with?
Yeah, totally. And that's kind of why I think I didn't take advantage of it in those roughly year and a half, 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Because I realized what it meant and what it is now.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I mean, let's hypothetically say if I just stayed a little hermit and didn't talk to anybody, I don't think I would be as good of a trader nor as profitable.
Wow. Beautiful.
It just learning other ideas, being able to reflect on your own trades, having someone else reflect on your own trades. Yeah. You reflect on someone else's trades. Like, teacher and teachee can start flipping back and forth between two, experienced traders. I think having some kind of community like that, whether it's one person or 5 or 50, I think is super valuable. Yeah. And arguably, if you want to trade for a long time or career, it's probably necessary.
Yeah, beautiful. Clover, tell us about why you co-founded Clover. Tell us about your partners and where it came from. Why did you all decide to even put this together?
We're talking about community. This is right on topic. As some of the guys I met and became very close with through trading were these other 3 guys. There was 5 of us. Jack Schwartz, but he actually went off to go get his PhD, so he's not as incorporated in Clover anymore. But Jack Kellogg was actually the first person to reach out to me, like actually be the person to say, like, hey man, like, what's going on? We were both up around like $30,000 in profits at the time, so we really connected. Like we both saw progress in each other. So still really close with him to this day. Huddy was another trader that we bonded over because we were both kind of short biased. And now we're just good friends. I did, was it October? I just went to go hang out with him just because. And then Dom's another close friend who actually, he really taught me early on in like 2018, 2019 to get good at going long, like breakouts. I was never really a good, strong breakout trader, but he was. And so, he essentially like really helped me get good at it. Wow. So we all met between, call it 2018, 2019. And then, we just stayed friends and got to the point where we actually, Huddy and Dom were doing a in-person boot camp for traders back in, was it, I think, April 2022. And they invited Jack and I to speak.
Wow.
And we spoke, and it was so much fun. It was such a great success. And we were like, why don't we should do more of this? And it ended up being like, well, let's just have a community online about it and then have boot camps throughout the year. And that's what Clover, became. So yeah.
Beautiful. And I know there's a specific journal that's for sale on the Clover website that you put together. Just talk a little bit about that journal.
So the backstory is I do a lot of YouTube videos. I'll do once a month, like trader recaps. I'll review my month. I'll go over my best and worst trades, and I'll do it through this Excel journal that I made. Originally it was just this P&L calendar, very simple, very neat. But looked good and organized. And I started doing this around 2019. And so one of my most frequently asked questions from people or watching my videos was like, can I have that spreadsheet? And my first reaction was like, no, like it should be very simple for you to make your own. Like I'm just not going to give it away to people. Mainly because you can make one. But I got this question like daily from multiple people. And this was when I started becoming more in the, on the education side of things. Like, all right, I started making YouTube videos. I started doing a little more teaching. I was okay, well, if I'm going to commit to being a teacher, I can't just share this thing and then be like, yeah, go figure it out. So I eventually started selling a cheap version of just this little template. But that didn't stop the curiosity, because my little calendar is just like one part. That was just one tab of the journal and Excel sheet. Like there was all these other sheets that I have that go into my process, and people still wanted to see it. And for me, it was, again, the same attitude of like, make it yourself. Beyond just me giving you the P&L sheet or the monthly P&L sheet, because there was a whole other work to like, I would make like a 45-minute guide for the calendar, but for the whole entire thing, I was like, this is going to be a multi-hour and multi-month project for me to make sure it works well and you can use it. So finally, and Clover kind of gave me the structure to do that, right? As an individual, I was like, I'm not going to pay a video editor and have a website and do all these things. But now that Clover was here, it gave me that opportunity to be like, okay, you know what, I can put something together. And so I did. It's my entire, journal. You see exactly how I journal, how I track my trades, how I put it into, how I reflect.
Yep.
And I actually do it in conjunction with like Kinfo. Kinfo is a great, there's paid versions, but there's frees where you can upload your trades and see all these stats.
Yep.
I'll use some of those things to then implement in my own sheet and journal, and then kind of find out and see edges, see how I'm trading things, how I want to continue trading things, how I want to manage my risk, like everything that encompasses like a process. I pretty much have it and use it with this Excel sheet. And so,
wonderful.
I wanted to make it available for people. So
I'm glad that you listened. They say, listen to your audience, and you listened finally to your audience.
Yeah, it took long enough, but
it's all right.
Yeah.
Better late than never. Better late than never. I think the last question I just want to ask you is, what is your relationship just in general as a trader to the importance of mindset and or the psychology of, how you navigate those highs, those lows, and even the steady, consistent dullness that has to occur too?
Yeah. It's super important. I've heard many traders say it's almost what makes you profitable or not. Like anyone knows what a breakout is. Anyone can learn how to the technicalities behind short selling. But being able to then mentally handle it and then mentally rehearse it and continue day in and out doing those things, that's really where I think the edge comes in. If you're discretionary trading, right? If you're algo trading or letting a computer do it for you, then sure, let the computer do it for you. But if you're going to discretionarily trade, you've got to get yourself in check, because it really becomes then you versus you. And so learning how to handle your emotions, learning how to handle the highs and lows or the uncomfortability of just being in a trade or taking a loss, that's where a lot of the edge really is. But that's why trading is so difficult, because even if you have that down, and it depends on where you are, like a trader can have that down really, really well, but then doesn't have an actual strategy to have the edge there. Someone might have an edge there and know how that breakouts work, but then don't actually follow it through. So you need both. But I think the psychology ends up showing up more, right? If you got that down, it's much easier to then get a setup down, versus you have a setup down, you don't have the mentality down. That could take a lot more work.
Kyle, thank you for this conversation. It was so good. Just so good. Thank you for being here.